very soon. And here in the studio for more insight, we have Mr. Liu Youfa, former Vice President of the China Institute of International Studies, and Mr. Rick Dunham, a professor at Tsinghua University and a former White House correspondent. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. We'll be talking to you very soon. And China has a long tradition of commemorating and honoring those who lost their lives serving their country and nation. But Martyrs' Day came into being in 2014. Now let's take a closer look at the significance of the occasion.
In August 2014, China's top legislature approved September 30th to be commemorated as Martyrs' Day across the nation. The decision gave Chinese people a day dedicated to those who made the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good of the Chinese nation. It is said that this move is aimed at publicizing the martyrs' achievements and spirit and cultivating patriotism, collectivism, and socialist moralities, so as to consolidate the Chinese nation's cohesiveness. Martyrs' Day, which comes just one day before China's National Day on October 1st, has a special significance. It was also the day on which the foundations were laid for the monument to the people's heroes in 1949, which stands at the heart of Beijing's Tian'anmen Square.
So talking about heroes, let's take a look at some figures. It's estimated that around 20 million Chinese people have sacrificed their lives serving the nation. However, due to missing records during times of conflict, the official list of martyrs only contains over 1.9 million names. In recent years, those who've died in service include law enforcement personnel, peacekeepers, and firefighters. More than 2,000 police officers have been killed in the line of duty over the past 7 years, while 20 peacekeepers have lost their lives in missions overseas. Since 2000, more than 300 firefighters have died during service. Last year alone, 27 firefighters were killed battling a devastating forest fire in southwest China's Sichuan province.
Vehicles carrying the bodies of the firefighters. Residents in Xichang gathered along the streets to pay their respects. Farewell, heroes, they say.
These boys are too young, like our own children. I really feel terrible.
The reason that we can live a good life is because of the sacrifice these soldiers made.
The lives of 27 young firefighters and 3 local helpers are honored.
The 27 firefighters have been honored as martyrs of the country upon the approval of the Ministry of Emergency Management. They will be given first-class honor.
The provincial government has approved honoring the 3 people who helped fight the forest fire as martyrs.
Family members of those killed are left shattered. Thousands grieved. The community came together. Most of the firefighters killed were in their 20s. 2 were only teenagers.
They are very young, really too young. I'm thinking how their parents must wish them to come home, but they can't.
I've brought my students to attend the farewell ceremony. These heroes sacrificed their lives for our country. My students were moved to tears. It's an education for them.
For more insight into Martyrs' Day, let's talk to our guest in the studio. Let me start with you, Mr. Liu Youfa. And how about we talk about these sacrificed firefighters? They were so young. So I think that partially tells us remembering the heroes is not only about those heroes in the past, but also about those heroes who have contributed their lives maybe on the current cause of the Chinese nation. And as we just reported, police officers, peacekeepers, and even officials in poverty alleviation, because the latest figures shows that in recent years 700 officials have sacrificed their lives in poverty alleviation work. So what do you make of the historical and also contemporary context of Martyrs' Day?
We Chinese people have a tradition to commemorate those who gave their lives for the national liberation, for the national independence. And also we have the tradition to honor those who dedicated their lives and sacrificed their lives to in the line of duty and as a police men and the peacekeepers, and also who die in their careers for the well-being of the people, for the construction of motherland. I think this is a tradition for the government and the people across the board to use the occasion to commemorate their heroic dedications and contributions. For some careers and jobs, they're risky to start with, but they just risk their lives to fulfill their duties, and while some of them may die eventually in the course. So these are the heroic deeds that the Chinese people need to commemorate, and people need to commemorate and to carry on their spirit of duty and devotion to their cause.
Right, and Mr. Dunham, as an observer on China affairs, what do you make of the role of the spiritual legacies of the fallen heroes to the people in Chinese society right now?
Well, what I see in China is that these people who have given their lives are celebrated for the nation. This is one of, I think, a cultural difference between China and some other countries where it is for their local community or their family or for other causes. Here, the nation celebrates them, and it's their role as part of the national government, whether it is firefighting or peacekeeping or police work.
Right, dear guests, let's get more updates on the upcoming main event. And for more on that, let's cross live to Tian'anmen Square in central Beijing, where our reporter Sun Tianyuan is standing by. Hello, Tianyuan, you've been following this very closely. Give a sense of the atmosphere at where you are, and what can we expect from the main event this morning?
Well, Pandon, behind me is the monument to the people's heroes in the center of Tian'anmen Square. And actually, this ceremony is set to be grander than last year's. This is the 6th Martyrs Day in China, and now there are 4,000 people waiting in the square, waiting for their moment to pay respect to the China's martyrs, the fallen heroes of this nation. And President Xi Jinping and other senior leaders are expected to join this morning's ceremony, and they're expected to present flowers to the martyrs and also pay a silent tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifices for this nation's liberation and freedom. And according to official data, there were about 20 million Chinese martyrs since the First Opium War in 1840 to the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949. So this year also marks the 70th anniversary of the establishment of the PRC, and tomorrow Beijing will host a grand military parade in celebration of its 70th birthday. So being here means a lot for everyone, especially me as a journalist, as a Chinese citizen. And it reminds me of a saying that goes, the only reason your world is filled with sunlight is because there were people who pledged their lives to save the world and to make the world a better place. And this is exactly etched on the monument behind me by the words of Chairman Mao Zedong, the late Chinese leader. It says, "Eternal glory to the people's heroes." And these martyrs will never be forgotten by this country, because several years ago, 6 years ago, in 2014, the Chinese top legislature made it September 30th official, the Martyrs Day, just a day ahead of the National Day holiday. And last year, a law made it illegal to defame the heroes and martyrs or distort and diminish their deeds. Back to you, Pandong.
Thank you very much. Our reporter Sun Tianyuan in Tian'anmen Square. So, the monument to the people's heroes stands in the center of Beijing's iconic Tian'anmen Square, as Tianyuan just briefly mentioned. It's a massive structure which commemorates China's martyrs. Now let's take a look at its history.
The Chinese government made the decision to build the monument in 1949, the year the People's Republic of China was founded. Architects from across the country submitted more than 140 designs. Construction began in 1952 and took 6 years to finish. The monument is nearly 38 meters tall and weighs over 10,000 tons. It contains some 17,000 pieces of marble and granite. On the pedestal, there are 8 huge bas-reliefs carved out of white marble. depicting scenes from the First Opium War in 1840 to the country's founding in 1949. It pays tribute to those who since 1840 have laid down their lives in struggles against domestic and foreign enemies. It honors those who have died in the struggle for national independence and the freedom and well-being of the Chinese people. The front of the monument bears an inscription in Mao Zedong's handwriting, which says "Eternal glory to the people's heroes." On the back is a message drafted by Mao and written by the late Premier Zhou Enlai.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has spoken repeatedly on the theme of heroism. Take a look. Well,
over the years, President Xi Jinping has said that heroes should always be remembered and respected. Also, he's been quoted as saying it's important for China to honor its heroes, the hope of the nation, while pioneers are a country's future. He also said a nation still needs heroism even in times of peace, and heroes are the coordinates that guide a nation.
So, Mr. Liu, we know that China is now at a crucial stage of achieving its two centennial goals and also fully established this moderately prosperous society. So, putting that into context, why do you think President Xi Jinping put so much emphasis on the role of heroes?
Historically, heroes are the monument for their dedication to the cause of national liberation. Since the founding of the People's Republic of China, heroes have dedicated their lives to the various causes they have been assigned to, and many of them died, performing their duties. So, to my personal understanding, heroes are the monument to mark the national spirit. They are the roots, part of the roots of the Chinese culture. And they are the living examples for the later generations to learn from, to seek the spiritual enlightenment. And for the future, I think they will, give the enlightenment to the people with regard how they should perform their duties in various fields.
And talking about this, the spiritual legacy, the national spirit, Mr. Liu just mentioned, and Ms. Tian'anmen, what do you make of the link of that spirit to the Chinese people's patriotism? Because we know that it's not only an abstract term, right?
Well, heroism and patriotism are linked together. I have thought about this really through my entire life because my grandfather, Barrows Dunham, who was an American philosopher, wrote a book called Heroes and Heretics, and it was about what defines heroism, what defines being on the opposite side. And so I think that heroism is giving of yourself for something bigger. And I think that it transcends nationalism. But in China, it's very important because the country is so large, so many people, and the sense that everyone living in China is part of something bigger than themselves. I mean, I think used well, it is an inspiration to people to give their best and sometimes to sacrifice personal gain for the greater good. The danger is if it goes into brainless nationalism and where you use words of patriotism for destructive purposes. But I think as long as you're calling on people's better angels, it's a very productive and positive thing.
Well, dear guest, let's get more updates on the occasion. And now we're looking back to the history. Japan signed a Treaty of Surrender on September 2nd, 1945, marking the end of World War II and also China's victory in the War of Resistance against the Japanese aggression. The war on the Chinese battlefield saw a terrible loss of life, but played a major role in the Allies' victory. Yu Yang explains.
35 million. That's the estimated number of Chinese military and civilians casualties in the war of resistance against the Japanese aggression.
The commander told us we must not fear the enemy. He told us the importance of the battle and showed us his determination. We all fought with the life and death determination.
Japan invaded northeast China in 1931. It launched a full-scale invasion 6 years later, and that made China the first country to be invaded by a fascist state in the Second World War. And China was the first to fight back. When China began the National War of Resistance, it was up against 2/3 of Japan's land forces and much of its naval and air forces.
China managed to tie down hundreds of thousands of Japanese troops while the United States invaded the Pacific. So the most important role I would say that China made, or its most important function in the Second World War, is simply not to surrender to a foreign invader.
I think the thing for people outside China to understand is that no country suffered more in the Second World War than China.
China was battling a stronger enemy. By some estimates, 1.5 million Japanese soldiers were killed or wounded. But the resistance efforts defeated the Japanese plan to take China in 3 months and further expand into the rest of Asia. It also gained time for the Allies on the European battlefield to defeat Germany and Italy.
Japan could have joined Germany in the attack on the Soviet Union. In that context, a combination of Germany and Japan might well have defeated the Soviet Union. Had that happened, it is very possible that the Americans would have stayed out of the war, and then Britain too. Churchill knew very well that without US help, Britain would have stood no chance.
And more than that, in 1942, 100,000 Chinese troops were sent to Myanmar, then known as Burma, saving more than 7,000 Britain soldiers from Japanese prison camps. And 200,000 Chinese soldiers sacrificed their lives there. On September the 3rd, 2015, China held a military parade marking the 70th anniversary of the end of the World War II.
No matter how far we've come, China will never be a hegemon. We will never attempt expansion. We will never place the misery we once felt onto other nationalities.
It was at that event President Xi Jinping said China planned to cut 300,000 troops from its army, the People's Liberation Army. He added that the aim of the move is peace. Youyang, CGTN.
Well, Mr. Liu, that brings a wider scope of honoring martyrs of the Chinese nation, because putting that into the context of the Second World War, they also sacrificed their lives for the common good of the whole world. What do you make of the implication here?
Well, I think we have to recognize the huge contributions that Chinese people contributed to the fight against fascist aggressions, both in Europe and in Asia. In Asia, as we saw from the video script, Chinese people lost more than 35 million people. I checked out the economic, sacrifices in the country. It was totaled at more than $60 billion US. Remember, that was the dollar term 70 years ago. And I still remember my part of the hometown was the battle, field, when the Japanese invaders, invaded China. My hometown is somewhere in Nanjing. So we call it Fourth Route Army was fighting furiously with the Japanese invaders. And look, part of the country, I think the larger part of the country was ruined. That was part of the sacrifice. Strategically speaking, before 1941, the bulk of the Japanese invaders were held up in the war theater here in China, and also which prevented the Japanese military government to launch the attack on the Soviet Union from the Eastern Front, which would bring the serious consequences, would And to be specific, it would it might prevent Stalin to determine to send its troops to fight in.
And let's
in
remember, back then, Japan was a much stronger economic military power than China back then.
Definitely. And remember, the U.S. Army was beaten by the Japanese invaders in the Pacific theater. So I still remember the famous quotation from General MacArthur, "I'll be back," before he was pulling his troops out of the Pacific theater. I think from the military perspective, I can feel that the Chinese contribution was to resolve the attack from the rear, from the Soviet Union perspective. I think when the Stalin could send the Soviet troops to the European theater, it could help, to defeat the German aggression, and otherwise, UK would be finished because France was already fallen, and then it would leave the UK alone to fight, which would be impossible.
And that brings a bigger topic. Maybe there's something common, maybe universal, in the spirit of heroism and legacies of the heroes, because back then nations putting ideologies and their national interests aside just to fight and try to win over Nazis and the Axis powers. Do you think, Mr. Dunham, still have some reckoning for the world today?
I think very much so. I mean, Stalin's Russia was very different in every way than Churchill's England or Roosevelt's America, and yet they fought together. I mean, it wasn't always easy, the personalities and the challenges that each country faced, but they fought for the greater good. And really, I mean, as a key part of that, you have to recognize China. The heroism of so many people, common people, resistance fighters, military forces, both nationalists and communists, and working together with the British, with the Americans, Americans flying the Army Air Force over the hump to resupply in Chongqing and to keep the war effort going. U.S. military bombing Japanese military resupply depots within China, and the two nations fighting together. Even when you go into Southeast Asia with Ho Chi Minh later became an enemy of the Americans, but they fought together against the Japanese. So I do believe when you have a threat to the world that was that strong, it brought so many different people, different differences together, and it was all for the good of humanity.
And that's exactly why people need to protect the legacy of the heroes.
Right.
And in recent years, China has undertaken legislation to protect the honor of the country's fallen heroes. Here's a look at the details.
When hundreds of firefighters were battling a forest fire in southwest China this March, a sudden turn in the direction of the wind claimed the lives of 30 people. All of them were officially recognized as martyrs. The reputation and honor of these 30 people are now protected by the Heroes and Martyrs Protection Law that came into effect last year. The law mandates that the country and the people should forever respect and remember those who made sacrifices and contributions to the Chinese nation. The law bans activities that defame heroes and martyrs or distort and diminish their deeds. Those who violate the name, portrait, reputation, or honor of heroes and martyrs face prosecution. Acts that glorify invasion are also banned, with offenders facing criminal punishment dependent on the severity of their actions. The law also demands the protection of memorials of heroes and martyrs, as well as publicity and education about their spirit and deeds.
So, Mr. Liu, let's start with the Chinese context of this, the protection of the honor of the heroes. And as we just watched, cases have been made according to those laws. Why so important? Why now?
It is the international norm for any country to honor the heroes. Many countries have specific laws and regulations to prohibit anybody from diminishing or defame the heroes. I think Chinese National People's Congress did the right thing in line with the international practice. In one way, it makes sure that the heroes would be honored and respected. So whatever wrongdoings against them would be punished by the law. I think this is in line with the Chinese tradition.
Exactly, and as we're speaking, we're watching live footage from Tian'anmen Square in central Beijing, where the commemoration on the Martyrs' Day is about to start. President Xi Jinping and also China's top leadership will attend. Do continue, Mr.
Yes, and on the other thing is we are entering into a commercial, pretty much a commercial, economy and society. People had been, following, the fashions, economic fashions, and they pursued their careers from the commercial perspectives. They look their futures from their own perspectives, but these have to be built on the precondition that the current status of the society was contributed by hundreds of heroes who have dedicated lives and give their lives. They sacrifice their lives for the current prosperous societies that we are going through. So this is kind of a mirror thing for people to watch and see how they should act and how they should pursue their careers.
So you're saying that whatever your individual thoughts are, there are some red lines you should never
Definitely,
cross.
the red lines should never be crossed. They have to do that, prepared to be, to bear the consequences.
And that partially tells the importance of the very occasion, Martyrs' Day. Chinese President Xi Jinping has entered Tian'anmen Square, and also to China's top leadership. The commemoration on China's Martyrs' Day at Tian'anmen Square in central Beijing is about to start very soon. You're watching live footage from Tian'anmen Square in central Beijing. Monday, September the 30th, marks China's 6th Martyrs' Day. Activities are underway all across the country to honor fallen heroes, and this is the main event at Tian'anmen Square. Chinese President Xi Jinping and senior officials will lay flowers and pay tribute at the monument to the people's heroes at Tian'anmen Square. Veterans, family members of martyrs, and representatives from a wide cross-section of Chinese society will also gather there to mark the occasion. As we can see, this is the awardee of the Medal of the Republic, China's highest honor, Mr. Zhang Fuqing. He made great contributions in the Liberation War, and but after the war, he volunteered himself to work in one of the most remotest counties in central China's Hubei province, and basically he intentionally made himself an unknown hero. Now you're watching the monument to the people's heroes. That is the centerpiece in Tian'anmen Square. That is also the centerpiece of today's commemoration activity. And behind the monument is the Great Hall of the People, where it is the center of Chinese politics. Chinese President Xi Jinping is attending the commemoration at Tian'anmen Square. The main event is about to start very soon. This is indeed a solemn occasion. We can see that people from nearly all walks of life are attending this, along with veterans, as we just saw, Mr. Zhang Fuqing, and also the families of the fallen heroes. Children and members of the young pioneers in China are holding flowers. They're also expected to pay tribute to the monument to the people's heroes later in the event. Also, honor guards are standing by. The Tian'anmen Square is located at the center of the Chinese capital. Now, honor guards are entering the venue. The PLA honor guards are composed of representatives of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. They perform a daily change of guards at Tian'anmen Square and raise the national flag. Also, they are an essential part in important and crucial events of the nation. In 2018, the Chinese People's Liberation Army took over the responsibility of guarding the national flag and firing salute cannons at Tian'anmen Square. You're watching live footage from central Beijing. This is the commemoration on China's Martyrs' Day. Chinese President Xi Jinping leads the public in this event. Honor guards are entering the venue. And actually, the first Chinese ceremonial unit was formed in 1946, even before the founding of the People's Republic in the northwestern city of Yan'an. And back then, they were set up to welcome the visit of US General George Marshall, the special envoy of then US President Harry Truman. And in the 1950s, the battalion was tasked with guarding many other important missions. What worth mentioning is that members of the honor guards raised the Chinese national flag in Hong Kong in 1997 and also in Macau back in 1999 when they returned to China from colonial rule. You're watching live footage from Tian'anmen Square. Today is the Martyrs' Day of China. We all gather here to solemnly pay our respect to the heroes and also present flowers to the monument to the people's heroes. Here starts the commemoration. Now, the national anthem of the People's Republic of China. Now we will observe a minute of silence to the fallen heroes to the nation. End of
少年儿童献唱，我们是共产主义接班人。
Now children will sing a song. Now, floral tributes are to be presented at the monument. You're watching live footage from Tian'anmen Square in central Beijing. This is the commemoration of China's Martyrs' Day. Honor guards are approaching the monument to the people's heroes, and the floral tributes are to be presented at the monument. It's believed that around 20 million Chinese lost their lives during the struggle for the national liberation and sovereignty. But most of them remain nameless to the public. Only 2 million are listed in the government's records. The floral tributes are to be presented to the monument to the people's heroes. You're watching live footage from Tian'anmen Square in central Beijing. This is China's commemoration on Martyrs' Day. In August 2014, China's top legislature designated September the 30th as Martyrs' Day. The decision gave Chinese people a day dedicated to those who made the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good of the Chinese nation. It's said that this move is aimed at publicizing the martyrs' achievements and spirit, and cultivating patriotism, collectivism and socialist moralities so as to consolidate the Chinese nation's cohesiveness. And now, honor guards are presenting floral tributes to the monument to the people's heroes. And what we're mentioning is that Martyrs' Day comes just one day before China's National Day on October the 1st. It indeed has a special significance, calling upon people to remember. What does it take to achieve the China today? Now, President Xi Jinping is presenting floral tributes to the monument. China's top leadership are also attending the event. on September the 30th was also the day on which the foundations were laid for the monument to the people's heroes in 1949 in Tian'anmen Square. It's estimated that 20 million martyrs gave their lives for the independence and the prosperity of China. However, the official list of verified names are just over 1.9 million due to the scarcity of records in times of conflict. China has almost 1 million burial sites dedicated to martyrs, and there are also more than 170 memorials overseas. Every provincial level region on the Chinese mainland has at least one such memorial, but most of the facilities are located in central China or close to sites where important battles or revolutions took place. In recent years, those who have died in service include law enforcement personnel, peacekeepers, and firefighters. More than 2,000 police officers have been killed in the line of duty over the past 7 years, while 20 peacekeepers have lost their lives in missions overseas. Since the year 2000, more than 300 firefighters have died during peace. Watching live footage from Tian'anmen Square, and the centerpiece of the commemoration on the Martyrs' Day is the monument to the people's heroes. The Chinese President Xi Jinping is now presenting floral tributes and paying his respect to those fallen heroes. As we just mentioned, those heroes made the ultimate sacrifice to the liberation, independence, and prosperity of China. China's top leadership, members of the Standing Committee of the Politburo of the CPC are also attending, along with China's Vice President Wang Qishan. Chinese President Xi Jinping is now paying tribute and presenting floral tributes to the monument. And today, the Chinese President leads Chinese top leadership, and also representatives from all walks of life of the Chinese society. Now, President Xi Jinping and China's top leadership are paying their respects to the monument. Chinese President is paying his tribute now. Just to tell you a little bit more about the centerpiece of the commemoration, that is the monument to the people's heroes. And actually the construction started in 1952. The decision to build such a monument was made on September the 30th, 1949, also a day ahead of the founding of the People's Republic. It took 6 years to finish this masterpiece. The monument is nearly 38 meters tall and weighs over 10,000 tons. It contains some 17,000 pieces of marble and granite. On the pedestal, there are 8 huge bas reliefs carved out of white marble, as the officials are observing now, depicting scenes from the First Opium War in 1840 to the founding of the People's Republic in 1949. It pays tribute to heroes who since 1840 have laid down their lives in the struggle against domestic and foreign enemies, and that's also exactly the content on the back of this monument. And at the front of the monument, it's Chairman Mao Zedong's handwriting. It's like eternal glories to the people's heroes. From Tian'anmen Square in central Beijing. This is the commemoration of China's Martyrs' Day. Officials are paying their tributes to the monument to the people's heroes. Now, since 2014, the commemoration on Martyrs' Day has been an annual event, but this year it has some special significance because October the 1st will mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. And on numerous occasions, Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasized the importance of remembering the heroes, honoring them, and more importantly, to uphold the spirit of the heroes. For example, he said heroes should always be remembered and respected whether they have died in wars or at their posts. Now, the awardees of China's national medals and honorary titles are paying their tribute to the monument to the people's heroes. President Xi Jinping has signed a decree to award 42 Chinese and foreign individuals national medals and honorary titles as the People's Republic of China prepares to mark its 70th anniversary on October the 1st. So, the Medal of the Republic honors outstanding people who have made great contributions to the building of socialism with Chinese characteristics and defending the country. And the 8 honorees of the Medal of the Republic include scientists, lawmakers, and war veterans. We can see that the veteran in a green army suit is Mr. Zhang Fuqing, as we briefly introduced to him in program. Also, scientists and writers. Famous writer Wang Meng is also paying his tribute today, along with many scientists, engineers, and also senior deputy to the National People's Congress, Ms. Shen Xilan, is also present. Also at the same time, a representative from the Young Pioneers also paying their tribute. So, Mr. Liu, what do you make of the commemoration today?
Well, I think from my personal perspective, for President Xi Jinping and the Chinese government, it is their commitment to honor the sacrifices they have given to the national liberation and the national construction.
And as we can see that actually,
yes.
It's not only about fallen heroes, but also living heroes.
Yes.
As we are watching now, the honorees of national medals and honorary titles are now attending and paying their tribute too.
This is also a good opportunity for the living heroes, as well as fallen heroes, for the people across China, including overseas Chinese, to show their respect for their sacrifice and for their contribution. And it also for the people across the society to carry on their spirit, especially for the young pioneers. I think it's an occasion for them to witness with their own eyes their forefathers, what their forefathers have contributed, have sacrificed, so that they should be prepared to take whatever the careers they are going into and try to carry on and carry forward the heroic spirits and do whatever in their capacity to fulfill their duties. And in case when they have to sacrifice their lives, they should be ready. This is a kind of inheritance of the heroic spirit from one generation to the other.
And looking at the makeup of those 42 names, heroes, not only meaning that you have to fight on a battlefield in a military sense, but also you can do work with dedication, conviction and diligence on your own post. Is that right? Because we can see that even actors, singers, and also engineers, police officers are also among that list.
Yes, I couldn't agree more here. Right at the moment, China is on the road for the national rejuvenation, which requires people in all walks of life, in all careers, who should be ready to carry on and carry forward the heroic spirit which the fallen and the living heroes are demonstrating. They should do likewise to fulfill their duties on their lines, in their fields. This is my understanding that the national rejuvenation would take each and every Chinese to contribute their bit in order to realize the ultimate goal.
This is a solemn occasion indeed. That was the commemoration on China's Martyrs Day, and let's continue our discussion in the studio. So earlier we just talked about this in a more Chinese context, but Mr. Dunham, we know that some foreigners also lost their lives in Chinese nation's cause to gain liberation, independence and sovereignty, and today in today's China, there are also many foreigners who are contributing to China to build a better nation. And for example, on Sunday, we saw that a Friendship Medal has been awarded to some foreigners. What do you make of this in the international context of China's cause?
Well, China is not only building within, it is building without. It's building ties to other nations. Just because you are not Chinese does not mean you cannot be a friend of China. Just because you do not live in China does not mean you cannot participate in China, whether you are overseas Chinese, so an American of Chinese descent, or someone who is European who wants to help contribute. And some of it is building the Chinese economy, building the Chinese nation. Some is building international ties in our increasingly global world. So I think you can contribute not necessarily only by being in China, but by working with China or on causes that transcend national borders that we all believe in.
Do you think yourself is a part of this?
Well, I'm here.
Right.
So the answer is, I do believe it is giving of myself, giving back after years of success in journalism, and I very much enjoy working with both young Chinese journalism students and students from all over the world who are learning about the role of China in the world and learning about the interconnected global economy. So yes, I do think this is a good thing. The more we understand other cultures, the better off everyone is, not only people in China, but people in our home nations and people all around the world.
And talking about building ties, Mr. Liu, you're a scholar and also a veteran diplomat. What do you make of this?
I think, China, in its course to realize its national rejuvenation, it cannot close door and do it just within the border. It has to outreach to the international community. It has to outreach to the professionals from all walks of life and all the areas. In this regard, China needs to do a lot of more things because right at the moment, China has been outreaching economically across the world within the framework of Belt and Road Initiative and China has been carrying out many bilateral programs. So these are the things which require diplomats and scientists and artists, and including the soldiers and officers who are doing the peacekeeping missions. So this is a collective effort. So we call it publicity, work, the friendship outreaching, and the common understanding. So we call it understanding building. These are the things that we all need to pitching our bit to make a collective efforts for China to be a country understood by the international community as a whole.
And talking about that, President Xi Jinping has been calling for people to tell China's story well. So today is the Martyrs' Day of China. And talking about Chinese heroes and talking about their sacrifices, do you think there's a common essence in that part of China's story to the outside world?
I think we understand heroes are the international phenomenon. I think it's the cultural heritage of all the nations across the world. So when China is doing its functions to commemorate the heroes who are fallen, who are living, it's also an occasion for international community to watch. And probably it is also a publicity exercise so that China could be better understood and friends from other countries can seek references from what China has been doing to the living and the fallen heroes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Liu Youfa and Mr. Rick Dunham there. And that's it for this special coverage on China's Martyrs' Day. I'm Pan Deng in Beijing. Bye-bye.